Hey, what's going on, y'all? CardMasterCraig here, and today I have a new series for you all. It is called the History of Pokemon Card Reprints. And the way this series is going to work is I'm going to break down different sets in order of the Pokemon TCG, and we're going to talk about what sort of cards they have in there and how they're reprints. Now, some of you might be able to figure out what a reprint is just from the word. Re means again, and print, something that's made, again printed. Well, a reprinted card is something that's been in a previous set and then it is included in a newer set. And typically you see that with energies, trainers, and maybe some other fancy cards like a Black Star promo, or a lot of times EX or GX card. Essentially, it's just an updated version of a card in some way that allows it to be played, because I mean, you can't keep using energies from base set. You might as well just use brand new energies from Sword and Shield. But as you can see, they're pretty cut and dry, the same thing. Still the blue energy, just a little more updated. So we won't really be talking about this because this is it. Same thing with most trainers. Now, there are a handful of trainers that don't get reprinted and they get reworked in such a way that it's going to be a little different, and that's because when the game first started, of course, the rules were just meant for the initial power levels and everything that came with it back in the day. In fact, we didn't even have a lot of the trainer cards and formats that we have nowadays. But one of the ones that has always stuck around is Switch, where you can move one Pokemon for your bench to your active. And as you can see, it's still even in Sword and Shield. But again, we won't really be covering this because the main reason this is always going to be reprinted is for playability. And there are some other ones that happened. Wizards of the Coast did a lot of promos and pre-releases that came out before some sets. And essentially, it's not a reprint because, well, it came out before. Like, this is the War Turtle from base, but it came out before. Some of them even say this is a pre-release card, so we're not really going to be covering them, but here are the ones that were released with such a little insignia or symbol. Alright, so a little background about the Pokemon TCG. Wizards of the Coast had the license from 1998 to 2003. They acquired it a little bit beforehand, of course, to get working on everything before they released it in 1999. And then eventually Nintendo acquired the rights in 2003. And ever since EX Ruby and Sapphire, basically the third generation on, it's been all Nintendo. So today we're going to be covering Base Set 2. And I have Wizards promo already circled just because we already covered it. But we're going to be covering Base Set 2, and in future videos, Legendary Collection and Best of Game. And that pretty much does it for the Wizards of the Coast timeline for reprints. So why don't we get into it? What is Base Set 2? Now, a lot of us probably look at this and we just think, oh yeah, that's the second edition cards. Well, that's pretty much what everyone called them, but this was just Base Set 2. It was just a 2 there. And it was just 2 sets jammed together to fill some time. So let me explain. Back in the early 2000s, right after they finished releasing Jungle and Fossil was already out, Wizards of the Coast needed to fill a dead period, because don't forget, they are just a company producing so they can make money. They also released Magic: The Gathering as well, but there wasn't anything happening there too. So what they did was they took a lot of cards from base and a few from Jungle, because don't forget, Jungle was a small set, so I know this looks small, but this is still a little bit more than half, and they put it together, and unfortunately, it just wasn't a popular set. People saw it, it was just like, these are the same cards with the 2 on it. Yeah, that's the first history about reprinting in the Pokemon TCG. The same cards with a 2 on it, just because they needed to fill some time. But nonetheless, there are still some cool differences, and it is a popular set nowadays, because typically it's something that still ties us back to the Wizards of the Coast era, and it is comparatively cheaper. But it's still hard to find and still expensive, of course, because it's vintage. But there are no first editions because it would look very weird to see a 1 and then a 2. Here are the original pack artworks for base. Nice, nice. Jungle, very nice. And then here's the pack artwork for base set 2. Okay. Kind of random, but that's fine. They chose base, jungle. I like it though. Still nostalgic. It's got that Ken Sugimori artwork. Speaking of which, let's go over some of the artists that we're going to see. We're going to see a lot of these artists throughout our time as we look at reprints. Probably the most famous one is this guy right here, Ken Sugimori. Not only did he do the original watercolor artwork on the packs, but take a look. He did some of the most famous Pokemon cards that we all know. You recognize his artwork pretty quickly. And he's still active today. These aren't the reprinted cards. These are just some examples of the ones that he's done throughout his time. But again, he is probably the most famous one. Another one, Mitsuhiro Arita, another OG. These aren't the reprinted cards, but he's done, you know, Charizard. He's done a lot of the really famous cards. He's still making it nowadays. As you can see, here's a Chilling Rain card. But if you take a look, a lot of very cool artwork, very familiar. Now, this one, I'm not going to try and say his name. I don't want to butcher it. These aren't the reprinted cards, and he's not active anymore. But yeah, maybe this triggers something in your memory, like, oh yeah, I remember the 3D Pokemon. Yeah, he did a lot of them, but he stopped after 2002 or 3, and just, yeah, that's it. And then finally, we have our first female artist in the TCG. These aren't the reprinted cards either. There weren't any images of her online, and she started in Jungle, but, you know, a lot of the famous art that we see with Butterfree, Ekans, Team Rocket, and then again, all the way up to Sun and Moon. Alright, let's actually get into the cards. So, one thing I do want to point out first is, because of the computer scanners, a lot of these cards are just going to look a little different in shade, just because. So that's just the computer scanner. I mean, honestly, that's just the way it was printed. And ready? Drum roll. And that is it. So all we have right now is just a 2. 2 over here, and base set over here. Base set didn't have any symbol. The only way to really tell was just by looking down here at the number 102 and to see. Base set 2 had 130. That was really it. Same thing with just Jungle. Other than the little Vileplume flower, you had the 2. And you could also have a first edition. Like I said, there's not going to be any 1 over here, simply because that would look very weird to have a first edition of a second set. That wouldn't make sense. And finally, some cards that I'm sure some of us are just like, what's up with this one, Craig? These are called Shadowless cards, and they can be without the first edition, as we'll see soon, but again, base set, no symbol. You can have a first edition, but if you take a look here, notice how on both these sides of this card over here, it's very light, but it's very light again. But when you take a look over here, and on every other preceding card, barring a different set or something, as we'll see in some future sets, there's a shadow. During the original print run of base set, Wizards of the Coast, were still experimenting with the types of designs that they wanted to do. And this shadow was removed from the original. They decided to add it in, and ever since then, every single card, barring some sort of structural change to the card overall, has a shadow. So this is a recognized difference by just about everyone. Alright, so over here I have some cards respectively on the side from each other. Charizard, Executor, Pidgey, and Wigglytuff. Go ahead and pause the video, see if you can find the differences, and then we'll cover them together. Alright, ready? Start with Charizard. Again, base set, base set. I won't be circling the numbers down here, but again, that counts too, if you can squeeze your eyes a little bit. First edition. Yep, no first edition. And good call. Shadowless. Not Shadowless. You can even see the shadow here on Jungle. Jungle. Nice. Nothing else for Executor. Let's move down to Pidgey. Yep, no symbol. Base set 2. Ah, I tried to trick you with this one. See how it's a colorless Pidgey? So the shadow, maybe you think it sticks out a little bit more because it's black and white or not, but shadow. And Jungle. Jungle 2. First edition. None. So that about wraps up the first part of the series for Pokemon card reprints. I'd like to get out another video soon. I hope everyone enjoyed this. I had a lot of fun researching and making it. But thanks for watching. Make sure to like the video and subscribe to the channel. And I will see you guys next time.